Hello once again, everybody, and thank you for joining me in the Bettor's Box. It's BangTheBook.com's MLB betting podcast for Thursday, August 1st. I'm your host, Adam Burke. This and every edition of the Bettor's Box presented by our friends over at DSI Sportsbook. BTB and the number 200 is that promo code. 100% deposit match bonus for the Sportsbook up to $500. 100% deposit match bonus for the live casino up to $500 at BetDSI. It's only a game until you bet it. And we've got football to bet tonight. The Hall of Fame game, Broncos and Falcons. My preview over at BangTheBook.com. I know we're all excited about that. Yeah, this game doesn't really mean a whole lot. Yeah, it's week 0 of the preseason, but still live football action for us to follow, for us to bet on. So consider signing up over there at DSI Sportsbook. Check out BangTheBook.com if you already have an account over at DSI. We've got sportsbook reviews of all the major players out there in the sports betting market, so you can definitely check those out. Promo codes available for all of those sports books as well. And look, season win totals, futures, week 1 lines, early preseason lines, all kinds of different stuff out there for you to take a look at, and you want to have multiple outs at your disposal. So if you don't have an account at DSI, I would encourage you to consider that. If you do, well, make sure that you've got several different sports books at your fingertips here so you can get those half points, get those reduced juice numbers, whatever it is you're looking for here during the upcoming football season. And, of course, for the rest of the baseball season, WNBA is still going on. We'll have the NBA not that far away, college basketball, about 2.5 months away, something like that. So, hey, you know what? We still got a lot of stuff coming up here in a short amount of time. You want to be able to get the best prices that you can. So consider all the different sportsbook options that are out there. Certainly, we encourage you to check out DSI. If you already have an account over there, plenty of places you can look at over at BangTheBook.com. My MLB picks and tips piece has been updated for this week, or for today, I should say, so you can go check that out. Got a couple of plays in there for you. Also, tons of football stuff at BangTheBook.com right now. We've done several football pods. Lockie Lockerson, Brad Powers, Rolf Michaels, Brian Leonard. Yesterday talked with ex-NFL player Ross Tucker about the NFL preseason, some of his season win total thoughts, but then also written work over there. All the divisions and conferences for the upcoming college football season have been previewed from a season win total standpoint. In those articles, of course, you can get a link to my college football power ratings and also my Google Sheet spreadsheet with all of my season win total numbers, projected spreads for every game this season, schedules for every team. A lot of stuff in that spreadsheet. You can find the link to that in my power ratings article and in a lot of those season win total write-ups as well. Lots of good stuff for the football season. We're still covering golf, soccer, NASCAR. We got a great UFC preview from Christian Pina. Good Wyndham Championship preview from James Mazzola. James will also be with us here for the FedEx Cup playoff events. It's a great time over at BangTheBook.com, so make sure you check out all that we have to offer. Obviously, tons to get to here today on this edition of the Bettor's Box. We'll start with a look beyond the box score. I'll go over my thoughts on the Major League Baseball trade deadline. We'll go down the lines and recap some line moves from Tuesday and Wednesday. Also look at the card for today, including a pick for me. Then finally, a preview here of the weekend. So let's go ahead, take a nice deep breath here, and then we'll go ahead and go beyond the box score. We start with the Braves and the Nationals. And yesterday, as the game pretty much finished up, Atlanta getting Shane Green to bolster the bullpen on a day where Josh Tomlin got the save for the Braves to extend their division lead as they get 2 out of 3 here. Some interesting things in this series, as there always are in these division matchups. You know, Dallas Keuchel was much better than the final line would indicate. Chad Sobotka came in, gave up the grand slam to Anthony Rendon. But Keuchel, still the third time through, having some issues with that, having some issues turning that lineup over as he gets, deeper into the season here. Again, this is a guy, no spring training, just working out on his own. It's a guy that's got to work on getting a feel for some of those secondary pitches, those things that allow you to extend into a game. So for Keuchel here, still giving the Braves useful innings, very high ground ball percentage, had the strikeout stuff working against the Royals a couple starts ago. But, again, obviously, it takes time. It takes time to be in a position where you can go 100 pitches, where you can be in a position to get through that lineup a third time. Keuchel's not quite there yet, but I've been very encouraged with the first 4 innings in most of his starts. So this is a guy that as the season goes along here, I imagine I'll be on him more often than I'll be against him. I really like what I've seen so far. And also, too, this is a Braves team with a pretty good defensive infield, a pretty good defensive team overall. Those are things that will help a lower strikeout guy like a Dallas Keuchel. So encouraged by what I saw from Keuchel, at least for the first 4 innings in this start, really the first 5 innings, got into trouble in the 6th. So keep that in mind when you talk about Dallas Keuchel. I mentioned this the last time that the Braves played the Nationals. I think they had 6 stolen bases against Kurt Suzuki. They got 2 more in the series finale. Didn't lead to runs. They were both with 2 outs, both stealing second base. But still, something to watch here when Suzuki is in the game against anybody. But certainly it feels like the Braves have him timed up pretty well. The thing that's disappointing for the Nationals here in this series is that overall, their bullpen was pretty good. And yet they still fell short in the series, had that comeback off of Luke Jackson yesterday. Then Doolittle gives up to Josh Donaldson. Dong. It's a tough pill to swallow for the Nationals. And, look, Anibal Sanchez is settling in pretty nicely here. Still continues to be a very good contact management guy. Strasburg's been great. Corbin's been dominant of late. They'll get Scherzer back. They're still a very dangerous team. But, when Joe Ross starts or is the bulk guy, that's concerning. When Eric Fetty starts, you got to worry about that as well. So the Nationals are a tough team to bet right now because with close lines, they're up against it a little bit with the starting pitchers, but they're in a big favorite role more often than not because they've got names like Scherzer, Strasburg, and Corbin. So not a lot of opportunities to be on or against the Nationals here. But again, this bullpen has kind of stabilized a little bit here of late, something that you may want to consider as we go forward. The Tampa Bay Rays took the first 2 from the Boston Red Sox. You got Brendan McKay, Andrew Kashner in tonight's game as the Rays look for a sweep. I'll talk about that one more a little bit later in the show. But, when you look at this series, the Rays, narrowly escaped a bullpen battle in Game 1. Then they knocked around Rick Porcello in Game 2. Red Sox make it interesting getting to Ryan Yarbrough and then also kind of knocking around that bullpen a little bit. But, when you look at this Rays team here, their lineup is much longer now with guys like Eric Sogard. Now they pick up Jesus Aguilar as well. Some nice pieces picked up for them here at the trade deadline. I'll talk about that more in a little bit. They need bullpen reinforcements again, though. 3 and 4 for a lot of guys. Nick Anderson's going to slot into this bullpen very, very nicely. Did give up Ryan Stanek at the trade deadline, but Stanek was a guy that I think they kind of questioned his high leverage ability. They liked him in that opener role, but maybe not as much of a factor at the back end of the bullpen. Now you get Trevor Richards, another starter in there. Nick Anderson can be a shutdown guy for you at the back end of the bullpen. So I like what the Rays did here at the trade deadline. But that being said, again, a lot of their relievers working a lot here over the last couple of weeks. So it makes for a tough spot tonight, and it'll make for a tough spot until they figure everything out and get that starting rotation in order. Now, for the Red Sox in this series, the offense has been okay. It hasn't been what we've seen from them over the rest of the month of July, but they still have these major pitching concerns. Porcello is a gas can, not a fan of him. The bullpen, top 10 and 5th, they've been okay, but not adding any reinforcements. And, here's the thing about the Red Sox, and I'll talk about this with a couple of other teams later on in the show, but for the Red Sox here, I think they have enough talent in-house. I think that it's fair for Dave Dombrowski to say, you know what, I like what we have. We don't really need to go out there and do a whole lot. But also, when you look at the landscape here, really in both leagues, there's very little incentive to go after that second wild card spot because you're an underdog against whichever team you face in the wild card game, and then you're a massive underdog against the Dodgers or the Astros in the division series. So there's not a whole lot of incentive for teams to go after that second wild card. The Red Sox could very well get it, but with the Indians playing a lot of Central Division teams in the month of September, it does appear likely that the loser of the AL Central would have home field in that wild card game. So at best, you're talking about a coin flip if you're the Red Sox, or really even the Rays for that matter. What do? Do you go out there and be aggressive? And the Red Sox weren't. And what's always interesting about these trade deadline dynamics is that teams get fired up when you go out there and buy, and teams get a little bit disappointed when you sell. When you don't do anything, like the Red Sox, like the Cardinals, what does that mean? Do you send a message that you have full faith and confidence in the guys that are there? Or does it mean that you don't really think that much of your team to get you into the postseason? I think for the Red Sox, a team coming off of winning the World Series, I think they're fine with it either way. I think that they believe in the guys that they have. I think they're okay with rallying around this lineup that scored about 7 runs per game in July and hoping that they can patchwork the bullpen together. I think for a team like the Cardinals, it's a different kind of scenario. And I'll talk about that more here in a little bit. How about the Detroit Tigers? Taking 2 out of 3 from the Angels. Haven't talked about the Tigers much. One of the worst teams in baseball as far as I'm concerned. But they go out on the road here, take 2 out of 3 from the Angels. 30 at-bats with a runner in scoring position compared to 19 for the Angels. They only had 1 at-bat with a runner in scoring position in the series finale. They're facing Daniel Norris and the Tigers bullpen. Look, Griffin Canning was really good for the Angels here in this series. He's been very good overall this season. But you hope and pray otherwise. You know, the passing of Tyler Skaggs, obviously a tragedy for non-baseball reasons, certainly a tragedy for his teammates. But I mentioned this at the All-Star break that the Angels' adjusted win total under was a play for me here in the second half. And you can kind of see the reasons why in this series. You know, they couldn't out-hit a bad Tigers team, and they didn't do a whole lot against a bad Tigers pitching staff. And furthermore, this starting rotation, Andrew Heaney's hurt. You know, Tyler Skaggs obviously passing away. There's just not a whole lot to like about this Angels rotation at all whatsoever. And really the bullpen, you know, is kind of iffy at best as well. And you can kind of see it here in a series against the Tigers where if their offense isn't performing at a very high level, they're plenty capable of losing to bad teams. And I think that's what we're going to see the rest of the way from the Angels here. They play the Astros a bunch. That won't be good for them. They'll play the A's some more. That probably won't be very good for them. The Angels, there's just so many flaws with this team. You know, when you get out homered in a series by the Detroit Tigers 5-3, that's a problem. Bad look all around here for the Angels. They will continue to be a fade team in spots for me here, even though the market definitely likes them a lot more than I do. The Dodgers take 2 out of 3 from the Rockies at Coors Field. Wasn't as easy as it looked. John Gray, phenomenal in Game 1. Herman Marquez, awesome in Game 2. And then he gets hurt. And that's a big blow for the Rockies. I would presume that Marquez, given how it looked, and we'll see what the MRI says here today, he's probably done for the year at this point in time. Really no reason for the Rockies to push him. I think they're, 5-25 or 6-25 or something like that over their last 30, 31 games. They've been awful here of late. Kyle Freeland, terrible once again for them in the middle game of this series. Wade Davis with a big blow up. And, you know, look, I think I've mentioned this before that I feel like the Dodgers offense has really struggled here in the second half. They're 6th in weighted on base average in the second half. It is absolutely incredible, the bar that is set for this team. They take 2 out of 3 in the series here, despite going 3 for 21 with a runner in scoring position. The Dodgers are going to get this offensive train rolling in those high leverage spots once again. They are the best team in the National League. It's very clear at this point in time. Now it's just a matter of kind of balancing everybody's workloads, keeping everybody healthy, getting this team to October as healthy as you possibly can. The Toronto Blue Jays, with a sweep of the Kansas City Royals, they take 6 of 7 in the season series from Kansas City. And my biggest takeaway from this series is that Toronto overs are going to be very profitable the rest of the way. Look, Thomas Pannone, Sean Reed-Foley, Jacob Waguespack, very good in this series. But those 3 guys, and Pannone pitched into the 6th, same thing for Reed-Foley pitched 5, Waguespack pitches into the 7th actually. Only 10 strikeouts in this series for those Toronto pitchers. So a lot of balls in play. The Royals just didn't capitalize. They were 2 for 14 with runners in scoring position in one of these games. So that's the big thing here for Toronto. Their margin for error in the rotation is exceptionally small. But the offense is coming around. Kevin Biggio starting to hit. Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s got 15 homers. Bo Bichette now up. He'll be a hitter. Lourdes Gurriel Jr. is having a big year that nobody has paid attention to. There's a lot to like about the young bats in this Toronto lineup and a lot to dislike about this starting staff and about this bullpen. Now they trade Joe Biagini, Daniel Hudson, Aaron Sanchez. So this is going to be a young bullpen the rest of the way. Not a whole lot to like. Ken Giles pitching hurt. And the rotation, not a lot of strikeouts to go around for these guys. So my biggest takeaway here, outside of the Blue Jays playing better, certainly here, especially on the offensive side, is that they're going to play a lot of overs with a pitch-to-contact pitching staff in a ballpark that is not good at all for that at the Rogers Center. And also here over the last 2 months of the season, they'll play a lot of division games against teams that have either good ballparks or pretty good offenses. So a lot of overs likely coming here for the Toronto Blue Jays the rest of the way. The Indians split the first two with the Astros, absolutely dominated by Justin Verlander in Game 1. Then they get to Jose Urquidy and the bullpen in Game 2. Zach Plesac almost got out of danger. 3-run double from Yuri Gurriel that was just inside the line. We'll see what the new look lineup looks like for the Indians in Game 3. They face Garrett Cole, but with Yasiel Puig, Franmil Reyes, they're going to lengthen the lineup in a big way. The Indians have an offense that can compete now, but obviously it's a patchwork situation with this rotation here. After Clevenger and Bieber, Plesac's a guy whose FIP was 2 runs higher than his ERA coming into last night. Plutko's a bum. Danny Salazar now, his first start in 674 days comes tonight. Corey Kluber maybe going out on a rehab start next week, but still, he was terrible in April before the injury. Let's see what he looks like now. Lots of interesting things here for the Indians, but if they can get this win over Garrett Cole tonight, I think this is a big shot in the arm morale booster for this team, and we'll see if they're able to carry that over as they welcome the Angels here this weekend. Finally, the Cubs and the Cardinals split the first 2 games. Not a whole lot of offense to speak of here in this series. Craig Kimbrell, iffy again last night, gave up a couple hits, got a little bit dicey. In this series, the Cardinals, 2 for 22 with a runner in scoring position, and one of those hits belongs to Miles Mikolas. Didn't do anything at the trade deadline. Again, I'll talk about that here in a couple of minutes. But the biggest takeaway from this series for me, another excellent start from Yu Darvish. Struck out 9, didn't walk anybody. Since about mid-May, he's been really, really, really good for the Cubs. I don't know how many people in the market have caught up to that, but Yu Darvish, there was a line move on Darvish in that game against Adam Wainwright. But Yu Darvish has been phenomenal here over the last little while. Definitely want to factor that into your handicapping. All right, lots of trade deadline stuff here. I've kind of grouped together some of the acquisitions, some of the different things that have gone on here. Let's start with Houston. Houston kind of lying in the weeds a little bit. We were sort of wondering what they were going to do. They were linked to Trevor Bauer, Madison Bumgarner, Marcus Stroman, Zach Wheeler, linked to a bunch of starting pitchers. And then all of a sudden, literally out of nowhere, I believe it was even after the 4 o'clock deadline, I think, or very, very close to it, it's announced that Houston got Zach Greinke. And now you're looking at a front 4 of Verlander, Cole, Greinke, and Wade Miley. And you can put anybody you want in that 5th spot. The Astros, clearly the best team in baseball now at this point in time, in my estimation. Greinke adds so much to this starting staff, and obviously, too, a very cerebral guy, a guy with a big curveball already, a guy who maybe doesn't have the fastball velocity anymore, but just pristine command. It's scary what the Astros are going to be able to do with this guy. It's absolutely remarkable that they were able to get Zach Greinke and not give up any of their top 3 prospects. Just astounding what they're able to do year in and year out. One of the best front offices in baseball. But look, the Greinke acquisition speaks for itself. We all know how good he is. Joe Biagini and Aaron Sanchez, additions to this Houston bullpen. Elite level spin rates on their curveballs, but very underutilized curveballs by the Toronto Blue Jays front office and player development staff that seems to have absolutely no idea these days. Biagini and Sanchez may be big wins for the Astros as well, especially with Ryan Presley now on the injured list. They picked up Roberto Osuna from the Blue Jays. He's been very good for them. I mean, Houston just does this, with a lot of smart acquisitions, a lot of guys that have these raw underlying skill sets. They're the best team in baseball again. And now they've added reinforcements at the back end of the bullpen to guys that already have special kinds of stuff, like Chris Davinsky with that split change, like Colin McHugh with that heavy slider. It's astonishing what they're able to do. And the three guys they picked up from an arm talent standpoint, very, very special here in Greinke, Biagini, and Sanchez. Now, the Diamondbacks giving up Zach Greinke, giving up some guys here at the trade deadline, but I love what they did. They really restocked their pitching staff with a guy like Zach Gallen, who they got from Miami for Jazz Chisholm. In that Greinke deal, they get Corbin Martin, J.B. Bukauskas, and they also get a guy like Seth Beer, who has power to all fields, also an 80-grade name. I love what Arizona did at the deadline. Now, that being said, it doesn't have a lot of impact for Arizona here this season. And in fact, I kind of wonder about the mindset of this Diamondbacks team. They didn't give up Robbie Ray, which surprises me a little bit, because if you're going to be making a lot of moves, why not just go for the gold? They do have Ray under control for next year, and maybe someone pays a nice price here over the wintertime. But you wonder about this team. Now, they kept the offense intact, but you wonder here how they are mentally about being a seller, about not going for it. Mike Hazen came out last week and said, look, exactly what I mentioned earlier on in the show. What is my incentive to go on the road in the wild card game and then maybe play the Dodgers? There's no incentive for that. And it didn't really affect the team too much, but now you see him put his money where his mouth is, literally, with the Zach Greinke deal. What happens with this team? I don't know if anything changes for them. I think Torey Lovullo, and this was kind of interesting last year when Arizona collapsed in September, he kind of felt like this was their last chance to go and make a playoff run. And they've had some guys in this lineup. Eduardo Escobar has been, I think, much better than anybody thought. Ketel Marte becoming a top 10 player in baseball was something that nobody saw coming. They've got a lot to build on for next year. But now the second half, I think, becomes about developing Gallen, Martin, Bukauskas, because these are guys that you want in the starting rotation for next year. So Arizona, probably something of an over team here the rest of the way, although Gallen, we've obviously seen what he's been able to do at the big league level so far. It's a really interesting dynamic for Arizona, but I can tell you, and I'll talk about this a little bit more here in a few minutes, they're one of the big winners of the trade deadline for me. I love what they did. The worst thing you can do in any professional sport is be in limbo, is be in purgatory. You either buy or you sell, but you do something. And Arizona, to me, made the right call. Toronto, in that Biagini and Sanchez deal, they pick up Derek Fisher, a decent outfield piece, a good hitter, should play well in that park factor there. Then they make the Marcus Stroman deal where the industry sort of thinking that they could have gotten a much better return than what they got from the New York Mets. But Stroman maybe wore out his welcome there. Maybe he was a little bit of a malcontent in that clubhouse. And I can't really blame him. I mean, this is a guy that was taken to arbitration over $400,000 by Toronto in his first year. It was always a combustible relationship with the front office. Maybe things just kind of leaked over to the clubhouse. And Toronto kind of playing free and easy here since that trade deadline deal. But also they give up Daniel Hudson at the trade deadline along with Biagini and Sanchez. So a bullpen in a state of flux for Toronto here, which again, kind of why I'm looking at some overs with them here as we go forward. The Rays were very active at the trade deadline. They pick up Eric Sogard. They also get Nick Anderson and Trevor Richards from the Marlins. And they get Jesus Aguilar from the Brewers in exchange for Jake Faria. Love what the Rays did here at the trade deadline. They got some controlled guys. They give up Jesus Sanchez and Ryan Stanek, but I like Nick Anderson a lot. I like Trevor Richards a lot. That changeup is a special pitch. I fully expect a pitching coach like Kyle Snyder to figure out what to do with a guy like Trevor Richards and really enhance and improve his arsenal. Love what the Rays did. Almost always a big fan of what these smart teams do at the trade deadline, and certainly like what the Rays were able to do. Impact for this year with Anderson as a back-end arm, with Richards filling in for the injured Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow. And then Aguilar, a nice piece to add to the lineup. Even if they just used him as a platoon component, still a nice power threat, and Sogard, a guy with a lot of versatility as well. So really like the moves that the Rays made. Again, not a big surprise because they're such a smart front office. But I like what they did. I don't think they gave up a whole lot. We'll see what Jesus Sanchez becomes, but sending him to the National League, getting some instant and long-term help makes that cost certainly more palatable. Stanek, like I said, a guy I think they liked in an opener role, maybe not as much in a high-leverage role, so I think that's a fair give-up for them. And Jake Faria, just a numbers game, a guy that has taken a leap in the bullpen. The Brewers probably going to use him in more of a starting capacity, and I trust the Brewers as well. They go and get Jordan Lyles here. Lyles with that plus-plus curveball. The Brewers tapped into that last year. Now they get him back. The Brewers generally tend to elevate whichever pitchers they acquire, so I like that they get Faria from the Rays, and maybe can turn him into back end of the rotation starter, something like that. Also for the Brewers here, getting Drew Pomerantz and Ray Black from the Giants. They send Mauricio Dubon in that deal. The Brewers needed to get some bullpen reinforcements, and they did do that here with Pomerantz, with Black, maybe with Faria as well. The shelf life of a reliever is very short. And the best example I can give you is Cody Allen. Cody Allen, the Indians used and abused him for 5 years with Terry Francona. Just whenever he needed Cody Allen, he went to him. And Cody Allen worked a lot of 3 and 4s, 4 and 5s, stuff like that. Allen signs that deal with the Angels, gets DFA'd, goes to the Twins. He's at AAA, gets DFA'd. This is a guy that 2 years ago was one of the best closers in baseball. Now he may not be able to find a job. And when you look at this situation with the Brewers, Josh Hader's still very good, but Jeremy Jeffress has fallen off dramatically. Corey Knebel's hurt again. They have worries. You can't trust guys like Matt Albers or Junior Guerra if you want to go out there and try to win a division. So they get a flamethrower, a triple-digit guy in Black. They get a guy in Pomerantz who, has a plus-knuckle curve. And we've seen the Brewers try to do this with guys that have good curveballs, like a Jordan Lyles. I like the moves that they made. They're not earth-shattering. They're not really going to change, not really going to move the needle too much for people in the National League Central, but I like what they did. I like betting on a guy that has a plus pitch and trying to build up the rest of the arsenal. That's what they did with Gio Gonzalez last year when he was good in his short stint. It's what they're trying to do with him again. It's what they did with Lyles. It's what they wanted to do with Jimmy Nelson and what they were doing before Nelson suffered the injury running the bases. This is what the Brewers do, and they do it very, very well, and I would expect that bullpen to see some massive improvements here in the second half. Speaking of bullpens, there were a lot of bullpen moves here, and we see bullpens being as bad as they've ever been here this season. The Twins pick up Sam Dyson and also Sergio Romo. The Padres taking a chance on Carl Edwards Jr. All the Brewers and Rays and the Houston transactions in the bullpen. The Braves pay a pretty big ransom for Chris Martin from Texas, giving up Colby Allard. Allard's a guy that has struggled a little bit, but he's only 21, still a projectable arm. They get Shane Green. They get Mark Mellinson. So the Braves really bolstering their bullpen quite a bit. All these bullpen deals, lots of relief pitcher movement. The Giants did end up blowing up that bullpen, although they still didn't find a taker for Will Smith, which is kind of interesting. They kind of tried to sell while at the same time stay in the race. Didn't move Madison Bumgarner, which was a little bit weird to me. But again, so many bullpen arms on the move here, and it makes a ton of sense. And look, these bullpen arms that were acquired by these teams all have upside. They all have projectable pitches. So I think these bullpens all should improve. And that's something that's worth mentioning here, worth keeping in mind, is that I've talked about this before. Big favorites do very well in Major League Baseball. Over the last 5 years, those minus 180 or higher favorites, blindly betting them, they've been exceptional bets. The good teams got better in the bullpen, for the most part. The Indians didn't really do a whole lot with their bullpen, but for the most part, the good teams got better in the bullpen. And this matters. because now they're more likely to cover those big favorite roles. So I think as we go over the last 2 months of the season here, and it's hard because now you're starting to use some of that bankroll for football, I think you need to be more overcapitalized in baseball because I think big favorites are going to be a winning proposition over the last 2 months with the strengthening of these bullpens. And also, look at the teams that gave up bullpen arms. Toronto, Miami, San Francisco. These aren't good baseball teams. And the ways that they were able to win games was by having those rare leads and holding on to them. So this is one of those scenarios where these teams that gave up some of these relief arms, they got much, much worse. And the teams that got some of these relief arms got much, much better. So I think big favorites will be a big boost for you the rest of the way here. Again, it's tough because you're sharing that capital now with football, but it is one of those things where, I think that the teams that aren't very good that were able to win games were doing so largely on the strength of their bullpens or of their pitching staffs. The Marlins, giving up a guy like Zach Gallen, tried to trade a guy like Caleb Smith. They're winning games because of that rotation. So some of these teams, I think, are in a state of flux right now, and we certainly know who all of those teams are. A couple of other deals to talk about here. The A's getting Tanner Roark. I like this move for them. I like how Roark has developed this year. A guy with a home run problem, but he's going to Oakland where you can kind of subdue that home run issue a little bit. Like that addition for the A's quite a bit. And then obviously the big deal here, at least in my mind, Trevor Bauer to the Reds, Puig, Reyes, and Allen to the Indians. Taylor Trammell goes to the Padres. Let's talk about the depth of this deal here for a minute, and then I'll add the handicapping components to it. The Padres have pitching, and Franmil Reyes is a DH. A lot of people kind of wondering, why would the Padres do this? Well, Taylor Trammell's a guy at a position of need, an athletic type of player, and he was something of a buy low guy because he's having a difficult season here this year, but he is a dynamic player with a ton of upside. And also, when you look at the current state of the Reds organization with guys like Senzel, Winker, some of the other guys that they've kind of preferred over Taylor Trammell, you could see why it would be a tough year for him, why he could pout a little bit, because, he didn't get that call, and maybe he felt like he was deserving of it. Now he goes to the Padres, who are a little bit more aggressive with their prospects. I think it's a good fit for the Padres. I think getting Taylor Trammell is a good idea. I think he has potential to be a very, very good player. So I get it from a Padres standpoint. Reyes was a DH. You've got outfielders. And Logan Allen, as good as that changeup is, you wonder what his projection actually is. Is he a middle-of-the-rotation starter, or is he a dominant bullpen arm? If he's a dominant bullpen arm, you got a lot of guys that could be those in the Padres system. He's a middle-of-the-rotation starter. That's good, but you've already got guys like Paddock, Quantrill, Mackenzie Gore. You've got several guys that kind of make Allen a little bit redundant. So the Padres trade from a position of strength to get a guy like Trammell, whose potential upside is higher than both Reyes and Allen. Now, the Cincinnati Reds getting Trevor Bauer. They wanted a frontline starter. They talked about one all winter long. Maybe they were close on getting Corey Kluber. Maybe they weren't. Trevor Bauer will fit here with the Reds. Derek Johnson is one of the best pitching coaches in baseball. We've seen that with Sonny Gray, with Tanner Roark. Anthony DeSclafani has been much better since the first month of the year. Luis Castillo hitting another level this season. Derek Johnson's very good. Former pitching coach at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is one of the biggest proponents of driveline baseball in college baseball. So Bauer, very familiar with Vanderbilt, wanted to go to Vanderbilt, decided to stay home and go to UCLA. He knows Derek Johnson. This is a match made in heaven for the Reds and something that can enhance their starting staff. And look, outside of Trevor Bauer's performance on the field, his impact with the Indians pitching staff, namely with Mike Clevenger and Shane Bieber, was off the charts. You're getting almost another pitching coach when you acquire Trevor Bauer. So if the Reds pitchers are receptive to him, that's a big if, then the Reds pitching staff could really take off for next year. And when you consider all the position player guys that they have, this could be your Central Division champion next year. I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. They've got a good bullpen. They've got a good starting rotation, and they've got enough offensive talent to be pretty good. So I think the deal makes a lot of sense for the Reds, even though you only get 18 months of Bauer, unless you're willing to give him his one-year deals. I think this move makes a lot of sense for the Reds. And really, they gave up Puig and Trammell here. Puig was a rental anyway, and Trammell, a guy that was falling out of favor and maybe trading from a position of strength as well. This deal made sense for all three teams. It's one of my favorite three-team deals of all time. Now, what does it mean in a betting context? We'll start with the Reds. I think it's a tough spot to really like Trevor Bauer right away. Bauer's been hurt this year, as he talked about in his exit interview with the Cleveland media. He's battled a lot of different things. Now, he does know that he's a Red now, and those trade deadline rumors probably were hanging over his head a little bit. But here's the thing about Bauer. Very smart, as we all know. Brilliant, genius type of guy from a scientific standpoint. Now he goes back to the National League. He was comfortable with the Indians. The Indians gave him all the leash that he wanted, and he knew the personnel around the league. Now he has to learn a brand new set of personnel. New ballparks, a lot of different stuff. There could be some serious information overload for a guy as smart as Trevor Bauer is. So that worries me here a little bit for the Reds. Also, home run and hard contact issue this year, that doesn't play particularly well at Great American Ballpark. So I don't love the near-term impact from a betting standpoint of Trevor Bauer for this team. We'll see how it plays out. I think he helps everybody in the long term, but in the short term, I think it's tough to like Bauer on a game-by-game basis, and I may look to fade him depending on the matchups. Now, for the Padres, I don't think Trammell will be a regular major leaguer here anytime soon, so I don't think this has a whole lot of impact on them. Reyes is a big loss in this lineup because the Padres are pretty home run dependent. They're a very low on-base percentage lineup, so they're trying to get a guy or two on and then hit a dinger. The Padres have kind of tanked in the second half here anyway. I'm mad at myself for not following through, talking about how much I like their second half under. I don't think it has too much of an impact on them. Now, the Indians. Puig and Reyes are great fits. They needed middle-of-the-order punch, particularly from the right side. They've got it now. They have a contact-based lineup, so Reyes' strikeout rate is not an issue for them. They've got some guys in the upper half of the lineup that do walk quite a bit. This offense is much better. And the Indians have been one of the best under bets over the course of the season. That should change. Now, the problem here is that you've got Clevenger and Bieber. You've got Plesac, who had a 3.15 ERA and a 5.15 FIP. You've got Adam Plutko, who's not a major league caliber pitcher. You've got hopes and dreams with Danny Salazar, and we'll see what those look like tonight. And you've got Corey Kluber a month away. Logan Allen is your first reinforcement. Maybe it's Aaron Savali. I don't know. But Logan Allen's your first reinforcement. It will help Logan Allen to get away from the PCL, where half the parks play like Coors Field, and probably to get out of the Padres system as well, where it's pretty clear that he's been bypassed by guys like Paddock, even guys like Margevicius, Quantrill, so on and so forth. I think this is a good move for Logan Allen. He'll probably get some spot starts along the way here for the Indians. I don't know how he'll fit in those starts. We'll see what those matchups look like. But from a betting standpoint here for Cleveland, overs are going to be the way to look. The bullpen is interesting. It's not a high strikeout bullpen. It's a bullpen where, a lot of contact management guys. They don't have great margins for error, so you kind of worry about that. Offensively, with Jose Ramirez going now, you move a guy like Jason Kipnis, who's been very good here of late. You move him down the lineup a little bit. Rob Perez having a breakout season, playing every day. This lineup is really, really good. They will beat up bad pitching. Will they beat up good pitching? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But they will beat up bad pitching. So Indians overs are going to be the flavor for me here. Clevenger and Bieber should be fine. Everybody else is a little bit dicey. So that's how I would approach these teams here from that three-team deal. So the winners and the losers of the trade deadline for me, the Diamondbacks are a big winner. I love the guys they picked up. Really strengthened their future rotation. Maybe some trial and error here over the rest of the season, but I really love what they did. The Indians are a winner as well because they needed the offensive punch. They're going to try and outscore teams, and they haven't had to do that since the 90s, so we'll see how that works for them. But they're a winner here because they got the return nobody expected them to get, and they were going to trade Trevor Bauer in the offseason anyway. So a big haul, a big return, and Logan Allen, I think, could be the key to this deal because I really like his upside. The Rays and the Astros, also clear winners here at the trade deadline. Now the losers. The Yankees are a big loser here. You know, when they're healthy, they're perfectly fine. But it's been injury after injury for them. They didn't bolster the starting rotation at all. Look, maybe there's some recency bias in this because over the last couple of weeks, their rotation has just been absolutely positively awful. I think they had to do something. And also they're a loser because their chief competitor, the Houston Astros, got much better. So the Yankees aren't necessarily a loser by not making a deal, but they could have added some depth, and now the Astros are much better. So the Yankees, in that respect, are a loser. The Cardinals are also a loser. I don't know how you don't do anything here. You've got an offense that's been one of the worst in baseball for a majority of the season. You've got a bullpen that you've figured out now, but you still want to try and bolster that as much as possible, and a rotation that's been a big disappointment. I don't know how you don't do anything. I don't know how you don't, you know how you don't do anything? You make stupid moves like trading Tommy Pham last year. And then it handcuffs what you're willing to do in terms of trading position players. Marcell Ozuna, a guy that's going to be on the move here. The Cardinals were a big loser. The Brewers got better. The Cubs, I still think, are an underachiever. The Reds got better. The Cardinals screwed up, man. They should have done something here at the deadline, and they didn't. Another loser here is the Minnesota Twins. Look, Sergio Romo and Sam Dyson are perfectly fine. I think those are decent guys. I would have tried to be more aggressive with the rotation. Jake Odorizzi's falling off a little bit. Martin Perez has come back to earth to some degree as well. Barrios has been fantastic here of late. But I think they needed to do a little bit more. Maybe get some more bench depth, something like that. But they're also a loser because the Astros got better and because the Indians got better. The schedule will help the Twins. Maybe they didn't need to do a whole lot to win the division, but I still think that they could have been a little bit more aggressive here at the trade deadline. And the Blue Jays are also a loser to me. They got nothing of high upside. Derek Fisher is fine. He's an okay player. They got very little for Stroman, who's still a controlled guy. They don't know what they're doing. The front office is such a disaster and a debacle for the Blue Jays right now. They're like, oh, well, we got 20 guys that can pitch. Okay. They're like, we got 20 starters that are major league caliber. Okay. Are any of them really above average? No, they're not. The Blue Jays are just a mess right now, and I'm certainly not impressed with what they did here at the trade deadline. All right, let's go down the lines here and talk about some line moves dating back to Tuesday. Joe Musgrove took some money for the Pirates here with that low left on base percentage. We will see that a lot here over the course of the second half as the Pirates, they're a trade deadline loser too. They didn't really do much. I think you've got to trade Felipe Vasquez to get an influx of talent into that front office. Also a loser because, you know what? That bullshit with the Reds is embarrassing. Stop throwing it, guys. Clint Hurdle should be fired or banned from baseball just so the Pirates have to fire him. It's a mess. They're an embarrassment right now here in the second half. They should have done something. They get burned big time on the Chris Archer deal. You don't trade Felipe Vasquez. Why? I don't know. I don't know what's going on there in Pittsburgh. Anyway, Tuesday we also saw Yu Darvish money as a flip favorite. That was a correct move there against Adam Wainwright. Justin Verlander and the Astros took money on Tuesday against the Indians. That made a lot of sense and was a winner. Griffin Canning took money against the Tigers. And once again, the Angels taking money against really everybody, but some pretty dramatic line moves against bad teams here of late. Dinelson Lamet took money for the Padres once again. That was against the Orioles, who are also getting faded almost no matter what. The A's and Chris Bassett were bet against on Tuesday. Adrian Hauser and the Brewers there in that one. Hauser's a guy that I think's got a lot of upside, a pretty good multi-inning weapon for the Brewers here. And Bassett, not a guy that the market really knows what to do with in most of his starts. Wednesday, we saw some love on German Marquez. That worked out really well until he left the game hurt. The Cubs took money against Miles Mikolas. That was Kyle Hendricks in that one. Not a big surprise, but Mikolas has been much, much better since the first month of the season. His high home run to fly ball percentage, a little bit misleading because of how good he's been here of late. Kind of dangerous to fade him, in my estimation here, and especially he doesn't walk guys. If you're a lineup that has to walk like the Cubs do, not a great spot to fade Miles Mikolas. We'll see if that happens again here when these two teams meet later on in the year. More Angels money on Wednesday as well, but the Tigers were victorious in that one. Astros money came in against Zach Plesac last night. Once again, low ERA, high FIP. Not a big surprise there. A bad bet on line opener for Greinke and Tanaka on Wednesday. Tanaka wasn't great, but the Yankees were able to take care of business in that one. Very heavy Jacob deGrom money for the Mets against Lucas Giolito and the White Sox. A lot of White Sox fades day in and day out here at this point in time. Makes a lot of sense, especially with Yoan Moncada out now for the next little while for the White Sox. So Jordan Lyles takes some money for the Brewers, get him out of Pittsburgh, and the market likes him. Lyles pitched pretty well there in that start yesterday for Milwaukee. I would expect that Lyles does pitch pretty well for Milwaukee as they know what he's about. Acquired him last year, now reacquired him this year. Lyles with that plus curveball. An interesting guy as we go forward. Thursday, seeing another fade of the Cardinals here. That's John Lester and Jack Flaherty in that one. This line just opened too high. I don't think there's really too much more to it than that. Seeing some Marlins money against the Twins and Michael Pineda. That game already underway here. Then seeing heavy Zach Wheeler money with a fade of the White Sox and Dylan Cease. A lot of this because Moncada's out of the lineup. Again, that quant crowd will move numbers based on who's out of the lineup. Moncada, the best all-around hitter in that White Sox lineup here throughout the course of the season. Without him, they're even worse. Wheeler doesn't get moved. The Mets playing a little bit better here of late as well, so they're taking some heavy money against the White Sox this evening. A couple of picks I like for tonight. This line moving against me a little bit, but I do like the A's and Homer Bailey at home against Chase Anderson. Anderson with some substantial reverse platoon splits. Righties hit him very well. Lefties don't. A's with that right-handed heavy lineup. Brewers pen up against it a little bit. The reinforcements should be in town, but no Josh Hader tonight, so that's not particularly good for them. Also, Homer Bailey, one really bad start against Houston, two pretty good starts otherwise. So early evening play for the East Coasters, matinee play for the West Coasters on Oakland. Also like the Rays' first five tonight. I'm not an Andrew Kashner guy. Brendan McKay, left-handed, deceptive, dominant the first time through in his four starts. At even money here, I think the Rays can get out in front, play from in front. I'll take that gamble at an even money price. So the Rays for the first five, not sure what their bullpen looks like tonight. Not sure if everybody gets there on time, but we'll take the bullpens out of it and take the Rays for the first five. All right, so what am I looking at here for this weekend? Well, the Brewers and the Cubs. Bad spot for the Cubs on Thursday. They play a night game in St. Louis tonight. They play a day game at home tomorrow against the Brewers. That'll be Zach Davies and Jose Quintana. Now, the Brewers are coming east from Oakland. They should still get to Chicago before the Cubs do with the 3.5 hours earlier on the start time, but still not a great spot for them. We'll see how this line moves, but a really bad spot for the Cubs with that very rapid turnaround off of the night game tonight. Again, Davies, Quintana in that one. Joe Gonzalez and to be determined on Saturday. Adrian Hauser, Yu Darvish on Sunday here for the Cubs and Brewers. Darvish has been very, very strong once again, as I mentioned. Like the Cubs a little bit on Sunday, but we'll see what that price looks like. Red Sox and the Yankees meet again. Eduardo Rodriguez, James Paxton on Friday. Chris Sale, Domingo Germán Saturday. David Price, Jay Happ on Sunday. The Yankees play Baltimore on Monday. It is Sunday Night Baseball. Then they go to Baltimore, and it's Masahiro Tanaka on Monday for the Yankees. Probably going to have a Baltimore ticket, at least for the first five, for Monday's game. Should be a big underdog price in that one. The Red Sox host the lowly Royals on Monday. But as far as this series goes, three lefties here for the Yankees. But David Price really struggling again last time out. He doesn't seem healthy at all. So Not a big fan of the Red Sox on Sunday. Could be an overplay with Jay Happ, who's been very, very bad at Yankee Stadium. We'll see if Rodriguez takes money on Friday. He's been better than James Paxton of late. Sale took money against Herman last time out. Herman was the winner in that one. So we'll see what the line moves look like for this weekend. But once again, I'm looking at Tanaka as a fade candidate on Monday against Baltimore. Reds and the Braves firing up a 4-game set here. Anthony DeSclafani, Max Fried on Thursday. Alex Wood, Kevin Gausman on Friday. Sonny Gray, Dallas Keuchel Saturday. To be determined for the Reds on Sunday. I would expect that's Trevor Bauer if he doesn't start before Sunday. Julio Teheran going for the Braves. Once again, as I mentioned, I worry about Bauer going to a new team, kind of paralysis by overanalysis kind of thing. I worry about him against the Braves if he makes that start on Sunday or if he makes a start sometime before that. Ideally, it would be Saturday, so I could take Keuchel against the Reds on fade Bauer a little bit. But obviously, we'll see how the rotation shakes out. I do think this could be a lower scoring series, though, on the whole. We'll see how Alex Wood is in his second start. But the Braves bullpen reinforcements will be in town by the weekend. That should definitely help them out a little bit and give the team a little bit of a shot in the arm. Finally, the Nationals and the Diamondbacks here. Long trip out to the desert for Washington. What is the mindset of the Diamondbacks? As I mentioned earlier on in the show, you've got Joe Ross and Robbie Ray on Friday, Steven Strasburg, Alex Young on Saturday, Patrick Corbin, Merrill Kelly on Sunday. The rotation is still intact for Arizona for this series, but next week things do get a little bit crazy. Nationals get 2 lefties in Ray and Young. They've fared very well against lefties over the course of the season. Obviously, you've got Patrick Corbin coming back to Arizona. Should get a pretty fond reception from the crowd there. We'll see what the Nationals do in this series. I do like them a little bit from a series price standpoint, although, with Joe Ross in the first one against Robbie Ray, that's a little bit scary of a situation with how bad Ross has looked so far. Probably need the last 2 games for a series price, but I think that's very much doable with Strasburg and Corbin in those. Lots of stuff here today on the show. At Skating Tripods on Twitter, Adam@bangthebook.com via email. If you have any Monday mailbag questions, we'll try to fire that up again after the weekend. Adam@bangthebook.com. Coming up on Friday, we'll chat with Christian Pina about this weekend's UFC event. If you've missed anything here of late, the football shows, a lot of great shelf life to those. So please make sure you check them out. That'll do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, everybody. And remember that you will never strike out when you're in the bettor's box.